Well, let's introduce you to our guests then tonight. Three guys who've been right across this story since around midday today, I think. Carver, you brought us more news on this, that this was getting towards an agreement. Michael Bridge, you've been on this story from right at the beginning as well. And we have a special guest with us as well, former Crystal Palace, Birmingham, Republic of Ireland striker,
Spurs
Clinton
fan.
Morrison.
And Spurs fan?
And Spurs fan.
You just threw me under the bus. No
You throw me under the bus all the time.
50-50.
Breaking news. Get that on the...
Half and half, Pete. Half Palace, half Tottenham. At the moment, it's full Palace. Until we get out of trouble.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll leave everyone's teams that they support in the bus rather than throwing people under it. Look, guys, this is absolutely massive news. Michael, look, I'm going to start with you here. What have you heard in the last few minutes about this confirmation?
Well, it's obviously huge news. It's been bubbling over the last couple of days, isn't it? And let's remember, after Igor Tudor, Spurs announced his departure, that the information we were given Sunday is that Spurs would have a head coach in place by the time the players return from international duty, and we expect that to sort of start trickling from sort of maybe today, tomorrow, and then Thursday. He was the club's number one choice for the summer. His Premier League experience, tactically very strong, and he plays attacking football. Now, we can reveal as well that Spurs tried to bring him in when Thomas Frank left the club, but they felt it was too... Roberto De Zerbi felt it was a bit too soon. He'd only just left Marseille. Now, here's the key, and this is information that Carve brought us earlier as well, but he's committed long-term. This is a 5-year deal. Now, this is the key. There is no relegation clause. Now, many were thinking, is there going to be any clauses? There's no relegation clause. This is a long-term appointment, and they feel this allows Spurs to plan for the summer transfer window and his time to experience the current set of players. They also believe this is the best option for the short term. They don't believe there's any other highly credible coaches on the market now, and they feel the players, they don't want another interim. They want a permanent, long-term head coach. This is also very important. This is what Carve touched upon earlier as well, that Spurs and Roberto De Zerbi are both sensitive to the comments he made about Mason Greenwood when he was at Marseille and the sentiment towards it. It's been carefully considered and discussed as part of the process. I'm sure when Roberto De Zerbi has his first news conference, it will get brought up. But that is another thing we've been, my information as well on that one, which as Carve has spoke about at lunchtime as well. Yeah,
Carve is our chief correspondent. It's bring you in now as well. And De Zerbi, not really known as a firefighter. The one thing he's got to do now is fight a gigantic fire. So why do you think De Zerbi is the choice, and what are the biggest challenges he's going to face?
Look, I think he's the best person who is available. A lot of Tottenham fans criticise the board for not being ambitious enough when it comes to signing players. Well, the club are being very, very ambitious because they're getting a head coach who has been linked with a whole host of other jobs. The Chelsea job, the Manchester United job. You know, when big jobs become available, he is on the shortlist. Now, in normal circumstances, there is no way a head coach as good as Roberto De Zerbi would join a club who are deep in relegation trouble. But hats off to him that he's up for the challenge. Now, in your question, you asked about his style. He's not really a firefighter. But I think in talks which he's had with the Tottenham board, he has accepted the fact that his way of playing, that has got to go on the back burner in the short term. In the short term, it is all about staying up. It's about rolling your sleeves up. It's about fighting for the shirt, fighting for the fans, fighting for the badge to make sure that you stay in the Premier League. Once their Premier League status is assured, then he can get to work playing his style of football. But I think in talks between him and the club, it became apparent that both of them accepted that scenario. Now, what's in his in tray? Well, in the short term, a whole host of things. The goalkeeping situation, the disciplinary problems, playing players in their best position, uniting the club, getting the fans behind the team again. It's a lot for him to do, but if you look at who is available, there is no one better than Roberto De Zerbi available. And if he hadn't taken this job, mark my words, he would have got a big job in the summer.
Clinton, De Zerbi is convinced that the hierarchy at Spurs, that he's the man. He's not convinced all the supporters.
No.
What do you think?
No, I think it's a good appointment. He's a good manager. You saw what he done at Brighton. You saw what he done at his short spell that he had at Marseille. And it's the style of football. I'm glad Carvey alluded to it, because he ain't got long enough to play the style of football. Tottenham don't have the players that can his style of football that we're playing at Brighton. No way. The centre-halves putting their foot on the ball and playing it into midfielders. What midfielders at Tottenham want to come and get the ball? I've said it all season. I like young Archie Gray, but he's been thrown in every position. But at least when he goes onto the pitch, he's given 100%. I think De Zerbi, long-term, will be a really good appointment. The thing is what Tottenham didn't want to do. They didn't want to make this appointment now. They probably wanted to wait till the summer. A lot of managers available then, Pete. But at the end, De Zerbi's become available, and I think it'll be a good appointment. But first and foremost, have to keep Tottenham in the Premier League. Because I've said it every week, Tottenham will be all right, they'll be all right. And after seeing Nottingham Forest, I started to wonder and think, now I'm starting to worry, will they be all right? But I think with this man, one thing I know, he'll go in there and he'll shake it up.
Have you or had you not had someone say to you, Tottenham will be all right, and you say, why? Because it's Tottenham.
Yeah, but
that doesn't mean anything.
Doesn't mean anything. You're spot
Games
on.
are running out, Clinton.
100%, you're spot on, Bridgie.
Seven games left.
Yeah.
Not one victory in 2026.
Connor Ben's one more there.
Well, the
I've heard you say that.
The one game that they did win, of course, was meaningless. It was the second leg.
Atletico Madrid. Yeah, you're right.
And the pressure was off with the players.
Yeah.
You know, it was a nice evening to go and watch, but there was no sort of expectation they were going to turn the tide.
So what? How can De Zerbi? I mean, he can't not win a game. He's got to win. He's got to win matches. Otherwise, they're going to go down. You know that Forest. And you also know that West Ham are going to pick up wins.
Leeds, let's not forget Leeds in this team.
But you know what, Bridgie and Pete and Carvey, by the time Tottenham play again, they could be in the bottom three.
Yeah.
Because they play so late on the Sunday. So let me tell you, it's troubled times for Tottenham. And I think they thought they were going to get away with it by bringing Igor Tudor in.
Going out there, look.
Yeah, I know. I didn't even stay to the end.
Didn't you? That's poor.
I left after 10 minutes, Bridgie.
You know, sometimes as well, we've got to put the other side of the story. Okay, I'm sitting here being very positive about his appointment, but there are some Spurs fans who think that he's the wrong person for the job. They will say, look at his record. He's never stayed anywhere for more than about a year or a year and a half. He's quite a volatile character. He's had issues where he's fallen out with his players. I think about a year ago, he was so upset with the fact that Marseille had lost, that there were reports that he'd locked his Marseille players inside their training ground. He's fallen out with people above him as well. So I can understand why some Spurs supporters would have their reservations. But I would imagine that the Tottenham board have taken all those issues into account. And at the end of the day, they've come to the decision that for the situation they're in at this moment and the situation going forward, he's the best person for the job.
The players need to take a lot of responsibility as well. I think over the last 2 seasons, they've got used to losing football matches. You know, Europa League was brilliant. Great day. You know, Spurs often get mocked, haven't won enough. Well, you know, when was Newcastle? Was it 70 years? Villa, they were celebrating a League Cup. Was it 96, a ceremony the other day? It's not easy to win trophies when you've got City going all out for Carabaos and FA Cups every year. But Spurs won it. They stopped all the sort of the negativity, the Mickey taking. But they've got used to losing league matches on the side. And that came to this year as well. They had a favourable Champions League group. They won those games and then went back to the league campaign. They actually started pretty well. The problem is, I find, is that they didn't overly take to Thomas Frank. They didn't overly take to Igor Tudor. But I do think they are going to respond and take to Roberto De Zerbi. Okay. I just get that feeling. He has that no-nonsense way about him.
No, he does have no nonsense, and the fans will take to him, but it's not about the fans. It's about the players taking to him.
Yeah.
It's the fans that... Listen, the fans can take to him as much as they want. It's about the players. Players are so big at football clubs nowadays, Pete. They basically run the club. They can decide what happens with that football club. I'm not saying players go onto the pitch nowadays and are not trying their hardest, but when I'm watching it, Tottenham, I'm thinking, does it hurt enough of these players when they're losing? Because you know what it's going to be like next season? Half of them will leave the club anyway. They don't care. It's the people behind the scenes that suffer when they go and play in Championship football. So hopefully... listen, for me, it's a good appointment. I think De Zerbi will do enough to keep Tottenham in the Premier League.
What a season Clinton had last year, by the way, winning the FA Cup and the Europa League double, by the way.
I did a double-double. And I went on both parades as well.
This club have been in Europe for, was it 18 years? 18 years in 21? That's pretty good going.
Yeah,
and people forget that. They talk about this and that and criticising the club. They're playing in Champions Leagues, Europa Leagues. They've won a European trophy.
I'm pleased the club have said it's long-term, because I think I make likenesses to Newcastle going down, and they kept Rafa Benitez, and they came straight back up, and it was a sort of that was key. And I think that a manager like De Zerbi, you would think, how's he going to manage in the Championship? But if it is long-term and he's going to stay and he's committed to, if the worst-case scenario happens, and I know we've had this conversation before, you clear the decks, you start again, you come up, you've got your manager in place. That's key. And that should give Spurs fans a little bit of hope. No one wants to go down, but you're thinking, well, long-term, if they do, they've got to. You're gonna have the best manager in the Championship.
He believes in himself, De Zerbi. He's not taking this job to think that Tottenham are going to be in the Championship. Absolutely no chance. De Zerbi don't want to be managing the Championship. He's gone there and think, 6-7 games to go. He believes in himself that he'll get this team out of trouble. No matter what anyone can say, the contract he's been offered, and I can understand it, probably significant, a lot of money. But at the end of the day, managers want to be managing in the best league in the world, which is the Premier League, not the Championship at the moment. So he believes he'll be able to keep that Tottenham in the Premier League, and I believe he'll be able to do that. He's no nonsense for sure, and he'll get the players playing for him for sure. And then next season, Tottenham will kick on when he can implement his style. But he can't go in there now and change too much, because if you give these players too much at the moment, they're not listening. You have to go in there, put an arm around the shoulder. That's what I think these players need at the moment.
If you're a Leeds fan, a Nottingham Forest fan, or a West Ham fan, are you nervous? You're more nervous tonight than you were yesterday?
Yes, I think so, because I think having Roberto De Zerbi gives Tottenham a lift. But look, it's easy for me to say all this stuff. Who knows? They could go on and lose their next 3 games, and their fans could be protesting, and the players could be getting sent off and falling out with Roberto De Zerbi. On paper, it looks like a great deal. What I thought was interesting as well is sometimes, I've got to be honest, I don't bother reading statements that clubs release in full, but this statement that Tottenham released, I did read in full, and they make the point that he was their first choice last summer, which is kind of throwing Thomas Frank under the bus a little bit, because they're now admitting that Thomas Frank was the second choice.
Who gets
they would have rather have had Roberto De Zerbi in the summer, but obviously there were issues to do with getting him out of Marseille, and maybe he didn't want to leave Marseille then because they just finished second and they were in the Champions League. But I thought it was interesting that they mentioned that.
Very interesting. And Spurs fans would always sort of chuck it at Daniel Levy, right? They say, Daniel Levy's fault. But what? Who is Spurs fans angry at most, do you think? Players? Hierarchy? Thomas Frank?
Everyone. I'll say everyone. They're angry at everyone. You're not getting results, so they're angry at everyone at the moment. So, I think they're disappointed with everyone. The players, everyone, whoever appointed Thomas Frank. Even though at the time, I don't know if you disagree with me, Bridget, I thought Thomas Frank was the right appointment for Tottenham. I did think he was the right appointment. I think he served he's done ever so well at Brentford, and he was ready to go to a bigger club. And that's not being disrespectful to Brentford, by the way, because Brentford are flying, but Tottenham is a massive football club. So when that opportunity arises, I thought Thomas Frank would go in there and do a good job.
I just think it was a bad fit from the start. His first press conference, he said, we will lose football matches. And I get what he meant, but you clip those things up. And then the Arsenal Cup was a bit like the Steve McClaren-Brolly moment for England.
Yeah.
And the fans just never took to him. They just never took to him. I mean, do you remember Ange Postecoglou? He knew he was leaving, but he said on that parade, 220,000, season 3. Tell you, I'm not watching season 3 again. No way I'm keeping season 3. but you know, in terms of De Zerbi, I feel with Roberto De Zerbi, what people tell me about him, he's probably said to them, yeah, I will stay next season, because I tell you what, I'll be in the Premier League. He won't be even thinking about putting this club in the Championship. Won't even be thinking about it.
It is going to be a roller coaster. It is going to be fascinating.
I want to get off.
What we know is
I'm here for it. I just love winding Bridgie. I love winding Bridgie up.
Yeah.
Because you're just a nice guy, mate.
Yeah. That's one of the plus sides.
I'm not sure about that.
Listen, it's going to be a roller coaster. De Zerbi is the man in charge, and we, of course, will keep you up to date with all of the movements here on Sky